Today, stocks rip higher, crossing milestone levels we haven't seen since March. Plus, big developments in the race for a coronavirus vaccine. And Elon Musk's SpaceX looks to make history at the Kennedy Space Center. I'm MacKenzie Sigalos, and this is CNBC After Hours, Work From Home edition. Let's take a look at the scoreboard. An absolutely monster day for Wall Street as stocks lock in impressive gains on high hopes about a potential COVID-19 vaccine and the reopening of the American economy. Both the S&P 500 and the Dow Jones finished the day at their highest levels since March. Now, stocks are still lower than they were in February before coronavirus lockdowns took hold in the U.S., but some aren't that much lower. The Nasdaq, an index with a lot of tech stocks, is just a mere 5% away from its record high levels. And now for three of today's biggest developments in the global coronavirus pandemic. First, a lot of news on the vaccine front from two different drug makers. Let's start with the bigger one, Merck. Today, Merck announced three different COVID-related deals and partnerships, two for vaccines and one for an antiviral treatment. First, the vaccines. Merck has announced a partnership with nonprofit research organization IAVI to develop a coronavirus vaccine using the same technology the pair used to make their Ebola vaccine. Those human trials are planned for later this year. And Merck has also said it will acquire a privately held company called Themis, which is working on its own coronavirus vaccine. They say they're rapidly approaching human trials for that vaccine candidate. Lastly, Merck will collaborate with a company called Ridgeback Bio to develop its antiviral treatment, which is a drug someone who is infected with the virus could take to get better faster. Now, this specific drug can be taken in pill form, and it's currently in phase 1. And second, the smaller company with vaccine news. That would be Novavax. That drug maker has begun phase 1 human trials in Australia of its vaccine candidate. The company expects initial results in July, and if they're promising, a phase 2 trial could begin in multiple countries, including the US. Novavax has already started ramping up manufacturing ahead of receiving those testing results and has said it could produce up to 100 million doses this year and potentially more than 1 billion doses in 2021. And this stock is on a tear. Shares have jumped a staggering 1,100% already in 2020. Finally, Amtrak needs a bigger bailout. The rail service operator asked Congress for an additional $1.5 billion in a letter made public today. Amtrak's business has been absolutely devastated throughout the pandemic as people basically stopped traveling. Amtrak did receive $1 billion in emergency funding back in April, but now says it needs the additional money or else it will be forced to make widespread cuts in service and even stop servicing some routes entirely. Okay, let's get to our sound check. Here's a roundup of the day's biggest action and what the top newsmakers and business leaders had to say on CNBC's airwaves today.
We now see a trend in an uptick in hospitalizations. It's a small uptick, but it is an uptick and it's unmistakable. And it is probably a result of reopening.
There's going to be another stimulus package of some type. The question is what? The question is how?
Often you do the ramp up, the expensive manufacturing ramp up subsequent to your phase 1 data. We started early because we knew if we waited until we had phase 1 data, we would lose maybe as much as 4 to 6 months. And that's in a pandemic, that's huge.
We're going to spend what it takes. We have the capacity, the financial capacity, the human resources capacity to prosecute these three programs simultaneously or in parallel.
We have made the decision to downsize our real estate footprint to accelerate our efforts, particularly in digital and virtual. And unfortunately, that had us make the very difficult decision that affected a number of employees around the world who were specific to those physical environments.
It may be a short work week, but this is a very big week for space. Yesterday, one of Richard Branson's companies failed a test flight. The launch was a data-finding mission for Virgin Orbit, a separate entity from Branson's space tourism company, Virgin Galactic. Now, all appeared to be going well during the inaugural test launch for Virgin Orbit's new rocket, but the mission was terminated early. And tomorrow afternoon, SpaceX will launch its first ever rocket with a crew of people, 2 NASA astronauts to be exact. And it's the first launch of humans into space from U.S. soil in nearly a decade. The stakes are high for everyone. Founder Elon Musk needs a successful mission in order to realize his long-term vision for SpaceX of colonizing Mars. NASA is embarking on a new age of the U.S. space program, and President Trump, who will be in attendance at the launch, has made a lot of promises about American leadership in space and the new Space Force branch of the military. CNBC.com space reporter Michael Sheetz is down at the Kennedy Space Center in Florida with the latest on tomorrow's history in the making.
I'm here at NASA's Kennedy Space Center ahead of a historic launch for both the agency and for SpaceX. Elon Musk's space company is about to launch 2 astronauts into space, and they're planning to do so on Wednesday. In a mission called Demo 2, the company and the agency will be sending these 2 astronauts to the International Space Station and back. It's the final flight test of a system that SpaceX has been developing for the last several years, and NASA has been helping them fund the development of it. The launch itself is important because since 2011, when the space shuttle program ended, the United States has paid Russia to fly our astronauts to the International Space Station. This gives us the chance to now, once again, use our own spacecraft to launch our own astronauts into space, and to do so regularly with consistency. The long-term goal of the Crew Dragon capsule is that SpaceX will continue building these and launching them to and from the space station, as well as on other trips into orbit. For now, what that looks like is just 2 NASA astronauts strapping into the capsule, counting down, lifting off, reaching the space station, spending about maybe 2 to 4 months on board the space station, and then coming back. After all of that happens, after they splash down successfully in the Atlantic Ocean, NASA will then undergo a pretty serious review of everything SpaceX did on this mission. So I'll say for the NASA side of things, the agency's really keen on seeing this project work. Not only have they funded the development of the Crew Dragon capsule to the tune of $3.1 billion, but they've also funded the development of Boeing's Starliner capsule to the tune of $4.8 billion. So altogether, the agency has quite a lot of U.S. taxpayers' dollars invested in these 2 spacecraft that they've been developing. All of the body of work that SpaceX has put together, all of their rockets they've developed, the spacecraft they've been working on, and you look at Elon Musk's long-term dream of developing a rocket capable of reaching the moon and even going on to Mars to build a Mars base. That long-term goal is only possible if this mission succeeds and these astronauts get safely to and from the space station.
Okay, let's get to our numbers round. We'll kick it off with 350,000. The TSA screened nearly 350,000 people at airport security checkpoints on Friday ahead of the long holiday weekend. Now, that's nearly 4 times the amount of people screened just 6 weeks ago. On April 14th, only 87,000 people made their way through the nation's airports. Now, while air travel is indeed picking up, it's still far behind last year's levels. On the same day in 2019, the TSA screened nearly 2.8 million people. Next, 450. Senator Rob Portman, a Republican from Ohio, has suggested sending $450 a week to unemployed workers who are returning to their jobs as state economies continue to reopen. The proposal comes as Congress examines alternatives to the $600 a week supplement to state unemployment benefits that's currently in place and set to expire at the end of July. Democrats want to extend the $600 a week through 2021, but Republicans have rejected the idea, citing concerns that the generous sum discourages people from going back to work. And finally, 14. Sales of Crocs in March increased 14% from the same month last year. Crocs is literally the only footwear brand among the top 30 tracked by industry researchers at the NPD Group to report sales growth in the month of March. The foam clogs were on the rise before the coronavirus pandemic, thanks in part to collabs with luxury brands like Vivienne Tam and recording artists like Post Malone. That being said, we can understand how someone might be more inclined to buy the comfy shoes during this time, when we're all in quarantine, and they can be worn in private without anybody else seeing them. That's it for After Hours. Stay up to date in real time with CNBC. Tomorrow, another player enters the streaming wars, HBO Max. The service costs $15 a month, which is more than its competitors Disney, Netflix, and Apple. Get the latest details on the launch of HBO Max and catch every development in this historic battle against coronavirus and the unprecedented economic fallout by going to CNBC.com and downloading the CNBC app. We'll be right here in our home office every Tuesday and Thursday with a new edition of After Hours, so be sure to catch us then. Stay safe, and we'll see you on Thursday.